Welcome to Beyond the Walls podcast. I'm your host, Kylie, and I want to share through personal experience and life lessons learned about personal walls that I have overcome and overcoming still, and to give you hope and tools to go beyond your walls too. Let's get started. So a few weeks back, I did an interview with Barry, and we put together the episode about how to rest well. Now, in preparation for that conversation, I just kept bumping up and I was like, I just couldn't figure out or pinpoint what was, my own but about rest. And she was able to give me a word, which really was, she's like, it sounds like it's just a pet peeve. And I was like, yes, it's a pet peeve. Here's my pet peeve when we are having conversations about rest. And it's this, that when we as women talk about needing rest, or when we're being marketed to from an advertising perspective or some kind of self-care product, there is just this one step too far for me that has this underlying hint that the only way you can have this rest is because you are so burned out. You deserve this break. You deserve this product. You deserve special attention. You deserve special accolades because you have been such a strong survivor, putting up with, sacrificing long enough. It's like this badge of honor that we wear and celebrate with each other for sacrificing ourselves and giving at the expense of our own livelihood. Now, we do this for lots of different reasons, but I think at the root of it, I just feel like that's such a bold-faced lie that we have bought. Because the opposite extreme is that if you're not feeling that way, then I think we are so fearful of being selfish. What I want to talk about today is this overuse, this overly concerning fear that we are going to be viewed or thought of or considered as selfish. I don't know about you, but I would hate to be called selfish. I don't want to look selfish or be selfish in any way, shape, or form. But I feel like there is this really deep-seated, twisted way where we all of a sudden become so overly concerned about not being selfish that in our over need to help and serve other people, we actually slip into an opposite extreme aspect of selfishness. Oof. Let's talk about it. So in that episode, Barry reminded us about the example of like being on an airplane, right? And every time you get on an airplane, they always tell you in the beginning, if you need oxygen and the masks come down, what do? Right? You put your own mask on first before you help other people. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't bristle at that thought. No big deal, totally makes sense. We have no problem taking that into consideration. And I would imagine if those masks came down, I probably also would not have a problem putting my own mask on first and putting it on for other people. And I wonder if part of that is because the flight attendants actually gave us permission. Like, it's not a personal choice. I don't have to make a decision, a moral decision of who's more valuable. Am I allowed to socially take care of you before I take care of myself? Like, I don't even have to take that into consideration. They already told us, like, I'm just obeying a rule that you put your own mask on first and then you help other people. Now, I feel like in society, for some reason, I don't know that we as women would ever say that overtly, that clearly, but I think that we subconsciously and in subtle ways have bought the lie that we have to take care of other people before we take care of ourselves. That's how we're marketed to. That's how the commercials go. Woe is you. You are so sacrificial. You have burned yourself out. You're at your last straw. You're now desperate enough that you deserve this thing. I can't stand it. It makes me feel so disempowered. Those messages make me feel like a victim, like we have no other choice. This just is expected of us. That to be a selfless, loving, kind, unselfish woman, we have to give to others to the point of death. That somehow we cannot have boundaries. We cannot consider our needs, that we can't mutually benefit from our sacrifice, right? That somehow we get no payoff in giving of ourselves that freely. Now, I definitely want you to hear me that I do think it's good to be selfless in general, right? Like that's a great goal. It's admirable, it's loving. And I think actually we as women, I think we have been wired and designed and created to be a lot more selfless, right? We are at our core generally caregivers. Our bodies have been designed to create life and to care for the life, right? We have this mom gut and this intuition and this ability to just be a little bit more on the nurturing, compassionate, gentle side. Okay. Now, it's a generic thing I'm giving. So don't get all wigged out. This conversation isn't about extremes and now you're awful because you're not a parent or, you're not as motherly or nurturing as them. Okay. That's not the point. But at our core, I think that is just how we are. We will just naturally show up so often as giving. But remember back in school days or when you're on a job interview and they ask you for like your strengths and weaknesses. Now, I don't know about you, but I never grew up around any teenage girls in school that proudly owned their strengths. Do you know many women that can just comfortably, easily name off their strengths? I think it's becoming a little bit more socially appropriate, right? But I feel like again, there is something about our culture and the way that we talk to each other, the way that we talk about ourselves, that it's like this false pretense, this false humility that's like we just have to show up less than. We're not allowed to celebrate our wins. We're not allowed to acknowledge our strengths. And I think it's that secret, subtle nuance where the lie is really hidden. That somehow we believe that in order to do those things, in order to acknowledge our strengths, to proudly proclaim them, makes us conceited and arrogant and self centered. And again, selfish, right? And it's just so uncomfortable. It's unnatural. We want as women to show up and we expect other women to show up insecure. And I think that's the culture that we have created, that we have taken on. We've taken on something that is natural and good, like us as women showing up as the nurturer. That is a good thing. But somehow, because we have taken it so far and we wear it like a badge of honor and this martyrdom, that because we can't ever say no and we can't ever have any boundaries, somehow we've taken our natural identity and our natural strengths and we weaponize them against ourselves. We weaponize them against the other people in our lives that don't show up the same way that we do. We preemptively take on more than is even appropriate because I think we've twisted it around to prove our value. When we serve other people and we take care of other people in order to prove or validate our value, I think that's our sign that we're doing it poorly or that we're doing it from an unhealthy way. We talk about that mask situation, right? Like we're given that permission that it is okay to take care of yourself. And I think that's where we've lost ourselves. Like we've lost the ability to have the conversation that taking care of you and taking care of me should not be mutually exclusive. We're uncomfortable accepting that we have value that we have needs, that we have weaknesses. We actually need to be given back to, and we are so uncomfortable being given to. Why? We would never say that to another friend, right? We would never tell that other person that is struggling or suffering and is feeling burned out, you haven't worked hard enough. You don't deserve a break. You don't deserve, who do you think you are to be given to? But why do we do that to ourselves? Why are we so quick to devalue our own needs and to find being needy and being given to as something to shame or something to fear or something unnatural, something that shouldn't be happening? And I think that's where we really find the burnout and the exhaustion, because we're giving to other people not out of our value and our strength, but we're giving to them out of our lack. We're giving to them out of our own low self-esteem. I'm not worthy of the sacrifice. It shouldn't ever be my needs being met. It should always be yours. I don't have any needs. Like, we're in complete denial that we have needs or wants or weaknesses. What do you think is preventing you from being willing to engage in a conversation that sounds like, I have needs and you have needs. How can they both get met? How could it be possible that we could just, without any fear, hesitation, or negative connotations, to just do the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves? Why can't we just go exercise because that's good for our body, right? Like, those are the situations where in real life, I think we would put our own mask on. Our families, the people around us, our jobs, our friends, our neighbors, they need us. Don't you love being needed? I think at the core, we really love being needed as women. We find great value in being needed, and we love being praised for our service and giving to other people. It brings us joy to give to others, right? And that's why I think inherently, like, being selfless is not bad. Being selfless brings a lot of joy to the world. We need selfless people. But why are we even bringing the conversation in that we must suffer in order to be givers? Why are we having to need a really good reason to take care of ourselves, to exercise, to take our vitamins, to take a shower, to dress nice, to, like, all of the things? Why do we avoid facing our own fears or taking that time to meditate, to pray, to nurture our own hearts, to guard our hearts, to be able to give out of our strength? Now, it's in this realm. Earlier, if you heard in the beginning, I talked about how on the opposite extreme of not trying to be selfish, we actually end up being selfish. What could be true is that in these areas where we don't take care of ourselves, where we quote unquote sacrifice for the people around us because they're so valuable, what if it's really actually not about that and we just don't want to do those things? What if at the core, I don't actually want to exercise? I don't actually want to take care of myself. I don't actually want to do the good things that are for me, because it takes effort and it takes time and it takes discipline and self-control. It takes uncomfortability to make a decision to say the hard things. To tell somebody no is really hard. It's uncomfortable. They might not like the answer. Here's a tangible example I can give you guys. I was talking with a friend the other day, and I was with both her and her husband, and they have a small child. Okay. So they're in early years of marriage. They're in the early stages of childhood, child rearing, which can just be exhausting, right? They both have full-time jobs, and he was going to leave to go for a run, and she was not feeling it. She's got issues. And so he's like, help us out. She always gets so irritated when I go running and then it causes this whole bump, but she won't really tell me why and like what's going on. So he had kind of stepped out of the room. And so I was talking with my friend. I'm like, what's the deal? What's the issue? And so being able to work backwards, I think there's multiple layers that happen. Okay. There's just the in general. How are we going to value what people do with their time? She is somebody who really values taking care of all the business and the must haves done first. And she does not value exercise. Like inherently, yeah, exercise is good. She probably should. As she ages, it's something she would like to do, but she doesn't necessarily love to do it. It's hard for her. It doesn't bring her personal joy. So, just on a value to value level, it is low priority for her. And so for her, there's this judgment on what her husband values. He highly values his own personal exercise. But to her, it's something that's optional. It's not essential. So there's this immediate judgment of valuing what other people deem as essential or optional. So there's a layer. Secondly, then there's the impact on the logistics of how it gets done and who's going to be impacted for who. Now, there's things that she would like to do with her time, but in order for him to go run, for him to go do these things, it is a sacrifice on her time and on her schedule. Then, as we were digging into it farther, I think what really came clear at the root was besides one, just judging each other's values and how they want to choose to spend their time, right? So she's on the top level thinks that exercise is the last priority. So if there's other more important tasks to be done, then he is sacrificing the needs for wants. Secondly, in order for her to get done the things that she deems as needs or wants, she would have to actually advocate for herself and communicate what her needs are. So then there's layers in that, right? And you heard me distinguish between a need and a want. And that's where I think we really get messed up. When it feels like a need, especially when it means like we're taking care of our children or we're taking care of our job, like those are other people, again, right? They're depending on us. So it's really easy. Those are always going to show up as needs. But things that are considered in our worlds as optional, our health, our physical well-being, taking that rest, taking the time to go as a young mom to take a bath or even sometimes to shower, right? Like, how are we going to just get our basic essentials taken care of so quickly become optional in our world? They become wants. We're so quick to turn the things that only impact us. It just seems like it's only impacting us. Our child's bath is more important than my shower, right? Like, do you see how that shows up in your life? So, in order to then deal with the first layer of just how we're judging our value system and other people's value systems and what we're prioritizing, then there's being able to be okay with allowing other people to take care of what we think is wants, right? And so, one, there just is this judgment on the values. Then there's the conversation about the logistics. And then below that was the actual root for her, which was being able to be okay with her own needs and wants. She's missing out on. And so he actually entered the conversation at that time and he's like, we can find it. We'll find the budget. Like, I am here to meet your needs. We can rearrange. Like, that's a conversation we can have. But if we don't have those conversations, if we're not willing to let other people support our needs and our wants, we will never find the time ourselves. And more often than not, the people in our lives want to meet our needs. Are we going to let them? And that is where, it really becomes that selfish space. It's really more about like what the harder thing for her to have done was to advocate for herself, to have asked for something, to have put out her wants, let alone put out her needs, right? So if you can probably resonate with that, like if we're going to pick one or the other, it's going to be a need, and it better really be a need. And I think that's where then the advertising comes in, where that's where they feed to us, where they make it sound like it is this desperate need. So it is okay for us to finally take up a little bit of space to advocate for ourselves on a desperate need, only if it's a need. It can't be in the wants. But why are we putting those categories in there entirely? That's where we need to take a look. So when you find yourself in scenarios where you are feeling like a victim, and to me, I think that looks like resentment and bitterness, or feeling unappreciated because you're not getting praised for all the hard work that you feel like you're doing and the sacrifices that you're making. It shows up when we say things like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could take a break? Wouldn't it be nice if I could go do such and such, if I could go on a vacation like that? Like, how did they find the time? Why do you get to go do those fun things and I have to sit back and suffer? Boy, I wish I could be carefree like that. Anytime we're saying things like that, if we took one step closer, deeper into that victim mindset and feeling like we don't get to have a say and we're suffering for the sake of others, what is really true? And it's either two things. Either one, because we're giving into that old lie that sounds like having needs and expressing them is selfish, or we're feeling bad because we just don't really want to do those good things we're supposed to do for ourselves. And it sounds a lot more socially acceptable to be a victim about it as opposed to saying, you know what, I just would rather be fat and unhealthy. I don't actually want to clean my house. I don't actually want to do whatever these things are that we're supposed to be doing to look good and look good to others. We don't actually want to do those things. But that doesn't sound as good as, woe is me, I don't have time because I'm sacrificing in all these other ways. Ouch. Now, I'm sharing all of that. You can take parts of that and just reflect and think through, like, what of that could be true for you? Is it something different, or is there some kind of similar hint that you are taking on in your life? Because coming from a recovering victim, a recovering, bitter, resentful woman, and just not being responsible for my life, those are things that I've found to be true. It's so easy for it to sound really good in the moment, but really deep down, it just is more about us. It's not actually about meeting other people's needs. It's really actually about the payoff that we get for meeting those needs. When it's not coming from a place of strength and equal value, it's not really about all the things that I can do for you. It's about, I am so unworthy. As you hear that, I want you to think about just your own situation and your own circumstances. How does it show up for you? I think even in a lot of this language, I'm talking in a very kind of black and white way. And I think what's so tricky about it is, the same with rest, or just our different needs. It looks different every week. It doesn't always show up the same way. And I think for me, it's so easy for me to hear a message like this and say, well, that's not me all the time. That's not always why I do it. Like, it doesn't apply to every situation. And so it's so easy to discount it or to just miss the message entirely. And I think I want you to hear, like, there are times where you do genuinely show up, you serve and you give out of a pure loving heart and love for people. It's not about insecurity for you. But start to take a look at the areas that drive you the most crazy, where you have a really hard time forgiving people, where you have those bitter roots starting to grow, or resentment, or it's all fine until all of a sudden it's not. And I think, man, that's so how it showed up in my marriage. Like it was fine, 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 fine. And then finally I hit this unexpected wall and I had no tolerance anymore. And now I'm not only just upset about this one situation, but now I'm upset about all these other ways that I had been serving. And I think it's those areas where you can find a lot of healing if you are willing to just take a look and see what really is the motivation going on behind there. And it's something that has to stay on top of. I think that's what's challenging about when it comes to our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. It's never going to go away. We are always going to have to keep working on becoming secure and maintaining our security. We are constantly going to be bombarded. The world is constantly going to be telling us that we're not enough and we're not good enough. We do that all by ourselves, and it takes intentional action to fight those, to bring in what is true. I would love it if all of us could show up every day with that kind of mindset that there is just no bristling at the thought of take care of yourself before you take care of everybody else. And I think that message, I think it's just so easy for us to hear all or nothing. If we only considered our needs and that was the top priority, I'm going to get mine at the expense of everybody else, then yeah, that's not what I'm promoting. But there is a whole lot of gray space between being completely selfish and then being completely selfless, where we are going to intentionally and on purpose refuse to put our mask on. Wouldn't it be so freeing to be able to stop having that confusing conversation? To stop feeling guilty, to just take some time every time we're given an opportunity to serve and to do something, and we just paused and took a look. Boy, what's happening? Do I have the strength? Am I mature enough right now? Am I strong enough to handle that? If I'm not, what do I need to do to get strong enough so that I can serve you that way? I think we as women, I would imagine we all want to make a difference. We want to be a positive impact on the people around us. I don't think any of us walk into life thinking we just want to make everybody around us miserable and be treated like a queen and everybody just, it's all about me. We want to be able to give back. We want to serve other people. But guess what? Just as much joy and satisfaction that brings to you when you can do it to other people, if you don't allow them to do it back to you, you are denying them that fruit and that joy and that excitement that they get to contribute back to you. And I think that's what's cool too in life is that there's seasons, there's times, there's circumstances when you are the strong one and you get to do the serving for other people. But there's also times where we're the weak one and we need to be served. And it's okay to let people help us. It is okay to take rest. It is okay to go take out that time to take care of yourself physically and mentally, emotionally, socially. I have counseled countless women who have had this same kind of conversation, right? Different circumstance, different story, same root. Here's my challenge for you: to keep the idea of completely removing the question, am I worthy or are they worthy? It's not a who's better, who deserves to suffer more, who earns it more. It just simply is. You are worthy of oxygen and having a mask on. You are worthy of survival and care. And so are all the other people in your world. Who's the strongest right now? If you can't meet the need, who else can? Heal yourself, take care of yourself without regret or shame, without having to earn it or deserve it. Like it just is a fact. And then we get to give out of our strength. We get to give out of our love, out of our confidence, out of our security, out of our value. That's where we can have life-sustaining sacrifice. That's where then we can, out of strength and health and wellness and confidence, to be selfless. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you would like more information about opportunities for coaching or more help outside of the podcast, you can follow us at beyondthewalls.podcast on Instagram or check out our website, beyondthewallspodcast.com. Until next time, bye.